Good afternoon, everyone. This is County Executive Pat Ryan. I hope you are doing well. Happy Thursday. I also want to say right off the bat, a very happy birthday to one of the key members of our team that helps make this happen, Mr. Kale from Radio Kingston. Many of you know, but he's the face not on the screen but behind the scenes making all this happen for the last few months. So happy birthday, Kale. And if you do see him, buy him a cupcake or something or whatever he wants. And I hope anybody else's birthday today, happy birthday to you too. We're going to talk about COVID updates for a little bit, and then we are going to talk also about some of the justice reforms that we're undertaking here in Ulster County, which I'm really looking forward to speaking about as well. Starting with the numbers as it relates to COVID, things continue to look very, very good here in Ulster County. Our cumulative cases are 1,785 since the crisis began. That is out of now just shy of 28,000 residents tested, 27,885 to be exact. Unfortunately, we have still had a few fatalities each week, and we are now at 85 fatalities of Ulster County residents, tragically. Good news is that the number of recovered is growing at a much faster rate, thank God, and we now have 1,385 residents who have recovered after being COVID positive. Looking out 10 days, we're essentially flat and seeing and projecting continued low growth, even in our worst case forecast. In terms of our hospitalization numbers, this is another data point that continues to improve each day. You can see that in the graph over time, and we are now at 2 individuals in Ulster County hospitalized for COVID-19. So we're getting closer and closer to that 0 and continuing to strive for that number. The number that we probably should start with this maybe going forward rather than the cumulative number. The number we're really focused on is the active cases. So right now we have 315 active COVID-19 cases in the county. That number, again, as you can see, is continuing to go down day over day as more are recovering, thankfully. The other number that we're very focused on, I think this is the single most important indicator that I watch and that Dr. Smith watches as we're monitoring reopening, as we're now well into phase 2 and approaching phase 3. That is the number of new positive cases each day. Each day we're testing hundreds of people still, thanks to our 4 testing sites across the county. And in the last 24 hours, we tested 843 residents and had only 2 positive cases. So now in the last 72 hours, we've tested almost 2,000 residents and had only 3 positive cases of those thousands tested. So right now we're around 0.2% positive rate for those being tested, which is very, very low. And that is a number we'll continue to watch very carefully as we go forward. Just the final note on that too. Again, I just want to reinforce the availability of testing, the importance of testing. As more people are getting back to work, it's even more important that if you do believe you have symptoms or were exposed, you are eligible to be tested. Many of our testing sites, you are not required to have insurance. At several of them, you don't even need an appointment booked online. You can just call. So if you have any questions about access to testing, you can call our Recovery Service Center, which is our former, now expanded COVID-19 hotline, and that number is 845-443-8888. You can also go on our website, covid19.ulstercountiny.gov. Kale with the slide right on cue as usual. Thank you. So again, just testing, and don't hesitate to be tested if you have any feeling that you should. Hospital numbers, again, two in normal hospital beds, and for the first time in quite a while, none in ICU beds or on the ventilator. and we look very good going forward on that. So that's the public health situation. We are now well into phase 2, as I said, approaching phase 3, and like I'm sure many of you, I am definitely concerned and paying very close attention. Our whole team is looking at it, but I continue every day to be pleasantly surprised that we are still where we are with very, very low numbers. And I probably shouldn't use the word surprise, because it is a result of everyone doing the things that we've asked in terms of masks and distancing and hand washing, staying home when you can, not meeting in large groups, and all those other things, which we know are disruptive, but which we see in the data every single day are working, and they're continuing to work even as we reopen. So it's very good news. As we shift to that second half of our discussion here and talk about how we move forward from the COVID health epidemic, we look at our overarching resilience economic plan. We talked earlier this week about our recovery efforts, the first of the 3 R's of our plan. In particular, we've talked about housing initiatives. We talked about our work on addressing addiction issues. We rolled out our recovery service center, which I spoke about earlier, and we're continuing to do all those things so that families and businesses and every resident in our county, even as the health pandemic hopefully continues to wane, we will be here for you to have your back in terms of the other recovery needs that you have. So please don't hesitate to reach out. In terms of reopening, to give us a date that we're looking forward to, Tuesday, June 23rd, which is just a few days away, less than a week away. That is when we are on track to hit phase 3. Phase 3 will open restaurants for in-restaurant at a reduced capacity, 50% capacity. It will open nail salons and other personal services that I know many are anxious to take advantage of, and those businesses are excited to get going again, and a set of other businesses as well. And that full listing is on our website, ulstercountyny.gov. It's on the New York State Forward website, and you can always contact us if you have questions on that as well. Part of our recovery service center is business support to all of our businesses. As we think about the longer term path and the direction that we're headed coming out of COVID, coming out of a once in a century, hopefully, pandemic in the midst of what is clearly a depression level economic contraction that's putting so much pressure on all of us, we of course have also seen and been had recent incidents that have awoken us to long-standing inequities, inequalities, and systemic racism in our country, and in particular in relationships between law enforcement and our communities here in Ulster County, around the country, and really around the world. So as we talk about how we realign Ulster County, well, of course we need to think about our economy, but it's even broader than that. It's our whole society, and addressing the inequities and inequalities that were there before COVID, and that if we don't address them, will continue to perpetuate after COVID. So in the last few weeks, since we all, I think at this point, have had to bear witness to the most recent and tragic example of these injustices, and seeing the horrific murder of George Floyd captured on video, and even additional incidents since then, including in Georgia recently. We've seen this, we've witnessed it, and so many have seen this for their whole lives and for generations before them. But I also know, and I think it's important to recognize, that others who maybe should have or could have seen it sooner or could have acted sooner have also been awoken. And at least in our county, there's a sense of a much wider recognition that we need change. We've seen numbers of people come out in volume, and a diverse set of people from across our county come together and raise their voices and say, enough is enough with this, and we have to take this moment and not just experience the tragedy and the pain and the anger and the frustration, but channel that into real action, to real meaningful change, and to a frame of having that conversation that actually includes everybody at the table with a real voice, particularly people of color and communities of color that have not had a voice in those conversations. So as we go forward, we in the county I recognize we are just a part of this, and ultimately, I believe that this is exactly how a democracy is supposed to work. We, as your government, are responding to the loud and clear call that we hear for change, and one of the ways that we're going to channel this into real action is by me today announcing the creation of our Ulster County Justice and Reform Commission. So how do we again channel that all those feelings and calls for change and the work that so many have been doing, and put real meat on the bones of what does that agenda look like? How do we build consensus behind it? How do we have these hard conversations? And for us, that's going to start by forming a commission that will come together specifically to look at what does justice look like in our county or lack thereof, and how do we get to a place where every single resident, as outlined in our founding values, finally gets to the place of true justice for all. And so that is a big set of issues, no doubt, but one that we have to take on and that we have to tackle and that we are committed to tackling. So the Justice and Reform Commission, I think the key thing for everyone to understand, this will be and must be informed by your voices, by the community's voice, by the community's input, by what we're hearing from everyone. And we're going to try to create a process and a commission that actually is inclusive. And so some of the things on this list on the slide are some of the big issues that we have already heard calls for at demonstrations from many of our community leaders, from our activists, from our young people. And these are just some of the issues on the table. And I recognize this is just the beginning, but the Justice and Reform Commission will tackle issues like ending mass incarceration, ensuring police oversight and accountability, addressing and ending systemic racial bias, and healing these divisions that we've seen come up between our law enforcement and the communities that they are sworn to serve and protect. These are high-level items. We know these are being discussed and worked on at the federal level. We know they're being discussed and some action has already been taken at the state level. But I believe that the change that we need to achieve really is going to start at the community level, at the ground level, and we are going to channel that and try to help facilitate that and say what in Ulster County can we do on these issues and what are the other issues that we need to address within this broader set of justice reforms. So the outlines of what that will look like and how that will be formed. At the high level, we're going to form a group probably around a dozen folks, and we'll be putting out additional details on this early next week. The group will really make sure we have all the key stakeholders, all the key folks and groups represented, including religious and faith leaders, members of the law enforcement community, community activists, and all the other key people needed to contribute and bring voice to their concerns, to their ideas, and to drive that change. And to be very specific, the mission of the group, first we will do an assessment, a review of the existing criminal justice system, policies, procedures, deployments of law enforcement, and so on and so forth. Then, after we assess, we'll develop a plan and a set of ultimately recommendations, which will become policy and where needed will become legislation. We'll take that plan, we'll lay out those specific policies and legislative changes, and with the ultimate goal of ensuring justice for every single resident, we'll put those forth, whether that is to the legislature for ultimate passage and approval here in the county, whether that is to our sheriff to implement into their agency's internal policies, or whatever the right sort of path is from a how government works perspective. The starting point will be really to look at what change is needed, and then the commission will work at how to drive that change. We will have our first convening of the group by the end of June, which is about, I guess 10, 12 days from now. So that will be our first meeting, but we know that this work will take a significant amount of time. There will be some things that we hope we can do very quickly, and I think it's important that we take immediate action on as many things as we can, but there will also be other issues that will take more time, and we have to recognize that and have sort of the short-term, medium, and long-term goals that we keep pushing on and keep working on. As we go through this, there is no doubt that there will be disagreement. There will be hard discussions, but at the end of the day, I am confident in just knowing this community, seeing how we've tackled all the adversity and challenges thrown at us the last, really this year of 2020. I'm confident we can come together and figure out how to emerge better, how to ultimately achieve that aspiration of justice, and what are those specific reforms. So more, as I said, more details to come on that next week, including who will be represented specifically, groups and individuals on the commission, when they'll meet and how frequently, what the deliverables will look like, and we're finalizing all of that now. If you have input on that, please don't hesitate to reach out. I've already been speaking extensively with our faith leaders, community leaders, with law enforcement, with many of the activists and community groups that have organized and led our peaceful demonstrations. But please reach out, and if you have ideas, if you want to be a part of this process, we want you to be a part of the process. So don't hesitate to raise your hand and take the seat at the table that is rightly yours. Shifting off of that back to the immediate and where we're at with COVID. As we head into yet another weekend, what weather-wise looks like it's going to be our first real kind of summer weekend, with the first day of summer, I think on Saturday, I believe. We're going to be well into the 80s and 90s, but looking sunny and nice. So we know people are going to want to be out and about. We know there's lots of opportunities to see friends and family. As you do that, and as you're out participating in the economy and supporting our local businesses, please don't forget the numbers for COVID are where they are for a reason. It's because each of you have been doing your part, and your fellow community members. Please continue to remember, wear masks, maintain that social distancing, wash hands, use hand sanitizer, especially when you're out and about and coming back home or meeting with others. As we hit phase 3 next week, one other detail is that permissible group interactions go from 10 to 25 people. So that's good news, in that we can see more of our friends and family and others we want to see, but it also ups the risk. So as we, again, release these restrictions, which we're all very excited to do, it just means even more caution is called for, and we can't let our guard down. I know I sound like a broken record, but I feel like that's what we have to continue to do, and just remind ourselves and hold ourselves accountable on that. In terms of Project Resilience, I always like to wrap up with this, because it's one of the just great news stories of our community rallying, coming out of COVID-19 and through COVID-19. Again, over 240,000 meals delivered and prepared, and this is the result of the work of so many volunteers, town and village and city leaders, food pantries, and generous donors who helped fund and are continuing to help to fund this effort. So thank you all very much for the work that continues to go on. We know the need for food and housing is going to continue to go up as we navigate through this. And so please be mindful of that and continue to help these efforts in whatever way you can. And a final note, thank you to each of you. It's now been many months of these updates and briefings. I kind of forget what it was like before. And so it's been nice to, at least through the camera, get to see you all more often than sometimes I had the chance before. So thank you for being engaged, for doing your part. A special thanks to all of those throughout this period who have been on the front lines of COVID and many who still are, those taking care of our sick in our hospitals and senior facilities and other healthcare workers, grocery store staff, public transit workers, teachers, pharmacy workers, our law enforcement community, first responders, journalists, mail carriers, delivery workers, all of you and more. Thank you for what you have done, and thank you for your willingness to serve our community. We wouldn't have gotten through this without you, and we won't forget that, and we're going to continue to honor that, not just with words, but with deeds in every way that we can. So thank you very much. We will see you next week with more details on COVID and everything else going on. Before we sign off, a special thanks again to Radio Kingston for helping make this happen. Again, happy birthday to Kale. Thanks, Manuel, for translating. Thank you, Diane and Roxanne, for translating and interpreting as well. Thanks to our whole team here in Team Ulster County that have gotten us through this in so many ways. Have a great weekend. Stay healthy, safe, and resilient, and we will see you on Tuesday at 2 p.m.